The Turki Alalshikh curse is real. This past weekend was an interesting time in the sport, specifically in regards to Turki Alalshikh and its future. So, when Turk first came into the industry, a lot of people were praising what he was doing. I myself included. We were getting to see some of the fights that we wanted to see and a lot of competitive 50-50 matchups. But the way he's been talking about Tim Tszyu and the way he talked about Canelo kind of is starting to show his true colors. One thing that really bothers me that Turki Alalshikh does is talk about fights before the fight that he has in front of him is finished. For example, this weekend he was talking about making Virgil Ortiz versus Terrence Crawford, and this was before he fought Boachuk. And that fight honestly could have gone either way. And Turk is out here planning things, and it's almost like he has like the Drake curse when it comes to boxing. Like if it's a fighter he wants to win, and it's a fight that he wants to make, somehow the fighter that he wants to win always ends up in a really competitive match or potentially losing. It's just the Turki Alalshikh curse seems to be a real thing. So lately we've seen him talk about a bunch of different fighters that haven't wanted to work with him, and he's kind of being a diva about it. So the Tim Tszyu remark caught me kind of out of left, because Tim Tszyu is a fighter that up until this point, regardless of whether or not you're a fan of his, I think we can all agree Tim Tszyu's been fighting just about everybody. He, hasn't turned down the smoke with anyone. He's been wanting to fight Charlo for the absolute longest. He's obviously faced a lot of good fighters. That Sebastian Fundora fight was a good example of the type of fighter he is. I mean, he could have took it to the judges' scorecards after that, that cut, but he chose to keep fighting because he had confidence in himself. He was beating Fundora before that cut happened, and obviously, it changed the trajectory of the fight. But that's like Tim Tszyu's a fighter that you'd want to see fight again. Like, he has the whole country of Australia behind him, and to be alienating him because maybe you're having issues with him or his promoter just seems weird. And not only are you alienating Tim Tszyu, but you're alienating an entire fan base. I'm not saying, obviously Australia isn't the largest boxing market, but, they watch the sport as well. You can definitely put on some good shows there. And it's just weird that because Tim Tszyu or his management team haven't reached out, immediately about certain fights, that the Turk is just willing to throw him to the side and not make him a part of his future plans. Especially when that's one of the biggest fights that could be made with, his favorite boxer. He's a big fan of Crawford, so, I'm sure that he'd want to see that fight. And honestly, it's a pretty competitive fight for Crawford. Not saying he wouldn't win, I think he would, but, it's a fight that we'd all be interested in watching. So I just think it's weird how he's approaching that situation. The Canelo situation's a little more obvious. You have two, large egos going at it. Canelo's obviously still the face of boxing, and so when he's approached with, the kind of things that Turkey is approaching him with in regards to, if you're wise, you'll take my advice, or you take this fight and, it'll be on my terms. Obviously, Canelo's going to be against that shit. So, that's to be expected. But the way that he's almost trying to freeze out certain fighters just seems really, really weird. The one promoter that hasn't, committed their life to Turkey at this point has been the PBC. They're still putting on events on their own. Obviously, they're few and far between, but I think this stacked card that they're trying to put with Canelo is to compete with the cards that Riyadh Seasons have been putting. And I think it's good overall for the sport that Turkey has joined, but just some of the attitude that he's been having towards fighters lately has been kind of off-putting. You see, when he first came, it's like, all right, I'm sure that there's some, propaganda behind trying to promote these Saudi Arabian events, try to drive tourism and things like that. Every country has its thing that they're trying to do. But as long as we're getting good fights, we're getting good fights. But, I guess the entry here in the U.S. didn't go as planned. We're hearing reports of Crawford's sales not doing good. I mean, anyone here could have kind of called that. Crawford's never really been a top seller. He's been a top talent, but never a top seller. And so all that promotion behind the event, I think not having stars like Canelo, Tank, and Inoue is starting to bother Turki Alalshikh, because he knows that those three figures are some of the most popular in boxing, and if he doesn't have the best fighters on his roster or on his payroll, he might not be able to have, the best league available. And then lately I've been seeing a lot of videos too, shout out to the boxing bros, about like, Turki Alalshikh holding people's hands. I noticed it and thought it was weird, but like the amount of, just the length that certain promoters are willing to go to in order to work with Turki is kind of, kind of cringe. The whole situation lately has just been kind of cringe, like him posting that he's the face of boxing and shit like that. It's just kind of, very egotistical, very, off-putting. And, I'm just, with him specifically, the reason why I say the curse is real is a lot of fighters are having their first losses on these cards, the Riyadh season cards. More than anything, I just think the Turk needs to stop announcing fights before the fight in front of him happens. Like, this keeps happening with him specifically. Like, he wants the Crawford-Canelo fight. Crawford has a very competitive fight with Israel Madrimov, and then the Canelo fight loses its luster. When it comes to wanting to, make the Tim Tszyu and Ortiz fight, he doesn't let Tim Tszyu's, cut heel. And not let his biases and who he wants to win dictate the fights that are being made. It's, it's not a good look. Now that everyone's starting to kind of see, like, the mentality and his agenda, a lot of people are split. You're seeing a lot more videos about how people feel about Turkey coming into the U.S. People are starting to reconsider the UFC model, right? Is one promoter really the best thing for boxing? Or should we treat it the way we treat everything in the U.S., where it's, free market and you're able to shop promoters around, you're able to shop networks, and a fighter is able to get a payday that they deserve while also, conforming to their market value. And, it's an interesting time to be a boxing fan. You have him arguing with like some of the biggest fighters in the world, and, we're getting some pretty good fights. The next major Riyadh season event is the Anthony Joshua and Dubois fight. That one should be pretty good. I foresee Anthony Joshua knocking Dubois out. He just has more experience, more heart. He's shown to be a, technically better boxer as of late. I know he hasn't fought the toughest competition, especially in comparison to Dubois, but I think he should be able to handle him with no problem. The next big fight that he has planned is the Beterbiev and Bivol fight, and honestly, that would not be happening without him. Like, those two fighters don't have great market value, and unless they were going to be compensated by Turkey, that fight was probably never going to happen. So there was also talks of Stevenson and Zepeda being on the undercard of Virgil and Crawford. That would be a fantastic card, but again, you're talking about fights before they're officially announced. And I don't know, I just feel like the Turkey curse is real, and that Shakur might either have an extremely competitive fight, will show his true market value that will hurt the negotiations with Davis, or, potentially lose to Zepeda, which I didn't foresee before, but, this curse might be a thing. So following all those fights, the last major fight under Turkey's schedule is going to be the Usyk and Fury fight. And unless he overpaid Fury, we weren't going to get that fight either. So, and the fighter, again, that's a good example. I just thought about it. So Turkey wanted Fury to win to set up the Anthony Joshua fight. And that fight didn't end up happening because Fury got outboxed by Usyk. So that's another example, which reminds me, while we're talking about heavyweights, Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua were supposed to happen too. And then Deontay Wilder goes and loses to Zhilei Zhang and Joseph Parker. Now, the Joseph Parker fight, I remember he was an extreme, favorite in that fight. It was ridiculous. But, many people thought that Deontay Wilder was just going to steamroll through Joseph Parker, and that didn't end up happening. With Zhilei Zhang, people were a little bit more in tune with where Wilder was currently in his career, so that one was really more of a 50-50. But the way Wilder went out was sad, honestly, because he was, people like to talk about Jared Anderson, but honestly, Deontay Wilder was the last great American, hope when it came to heavyweights. And regardless of his skill set or what you thought about him, he was entertaining to watch. And he put up some very memorable fights with Tyson Fury. And there's no questioning that guy's heart. So shout out to Deontay Wilder. But back to what I was saying, he wanted to make him and Joshua fight, and that fight didn't end up happening because, the Turkey curse. So please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd like to hear more about what you guys think. Do you think what the Turk is doing is good for boxing? Do you guys think the curse is real, or am I just, making this shit up? I don't know. But anyways, until next time, thank you very much for tuning in to The Fighting Post. Peace.